another indigenous tribe that has opted to legalize recreational cannabis and open dispensaries on their lands in Minnesota. Yes, the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe has formalized their adult use recreational cannabis regulations. They are intending to open a dispensary on their tribal lands by the end of the year, with possibly two more opening shortly after that. We have a couple of preliminary spots that we've been thinking about that's still up in the air. Leech Lake Chairman Faron Jackson Sr. told NPR News. With this new framework, it is intended to allow Leech Lake to move forward while at the same time giving the council the ability to amend the regulations as needed. It will be unlike the Red Lake Band, who basically legalized and opened their dispensary a week later. They're taking a little bit more time with this one. Jackson says he has taken policy direction from Leech Lake's elders and military veterans, but he is also carefully listening to band members who he says remain, quote, apprehensive. Just prior to Minnesota legalizing adult use recreational cannabis on August 1st, Leech Lake announced that Minnesota state law would effectively legalize cannabis within their boundaries as well. Unlike the Red Lake Nation, an Ojibwe community just to the north that recently opened dispensaries, Leech Lake does not enforce a separate set of criminal prohibitory laws on its lands. Instead, Leech Lake tribal police and county sheriffs enforce Minnesota's criminal laws across the reservation, but they do exercise civil authority over their lands, which includes the regulation of cannabis in such a way. Like Red Lake and the White Earth Nation, which started selling about a month ago, Leech Lake can begin marketing cannabis products months before non-tribal dispensaries, which must be licensed by the state. And the most recent thing that I heard is now that they will not even be handing out license until potentially the middle of 2025, further delaying the adult use dispensaries throughout the state. Leech Lake Legal Director Christopher Murray says, in addition to allowing the band to operate dispensaries, they want to encourage entrepreneurship among Leech Lake band members. The new ordinance creates a cannabis commission to license businesses and regulate sales. Murray says that the state's explicit respect for tribal sovereignty has meant that Leech Lake will chart its own course on how to best support its members. In other news, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina are voting today to legalize recreational cannabis on their tribal lands. It would actually make them the only place in North Carolina where you could legally obtain cannabis. So we'll keep our eye on that vote. As many of you know, and was discussed last week, there was a Republican congressman out of North Carolina, Congressman Chuck Edwards, who introduced the Stop Pot Act that, if passed, would withhold federal funds from tribes that legalize cannabis on their lands. However, it sounds like the general sentiment among all of us is that that was just a political ploy. It won't go anywhere. The tribes do have sovereign abilities. They are sovereign lands. I do find it interesting the way things have been playing out with the recreational cannabis dispensaries opening so much earlier on tribal lands in Minnesota, despite the fact that the dispensaries are over 4 hours away from the Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area. They have been getting quite a lot of business from the local area, no doubt probably from North Dakota as well. And actually, there have been discussions among the different tribes in Minnesota to potentially petition the state to open dispensaries off of reservations as well, which would be extremely interesting. We'll see what happens. Rochelle Gordon from greenstate.com reporting for High at 9 News. What do you guys think about this proliferation of tribal dispensaries? And it sounds like you all agree that this congressman is just talking out of his ass at this point with this bill.
Yes.
Do what they do.
He is definitely talking out of his ass. But I think that it's fantastic that these tribes are getting in on the cannabis game, and especially in these conservative states where the only place that you can really start up a market is on the reservation. So I'm all for it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, they don't need federal money after a while.
Facts.
Right?
And I think that that's a small way. I think that's a small way to kind of
get into these more restrictive markets
Exactly.
and kind of force them to open it up, because you can't do anything to the tribes. It's their own land. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
it has nothing to do with you. There's
That-
nothing you can do. So
The biggest problem that the tribes face is attracting people to actually drive all the way to them, because generally these reservations are pretty much off the beaten path, and you have to travel a significant distance to arrive at them. And so
if anyone's ever wanted good marijuana, they've never mind traveling for
that
it.
part is true. That part is true. That part is true. Everyone's up good for a road trip if they're going to get some good weed.
Rochelle, correct me if I'm wrong here, but outside of St. Paul and Minneapolis, don't you got to drive forever to get to anywhere in Minnesota?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like that's it. But you want to go to, Duluth or Bemidji or, anywhere else, it's many, many hours. Now there is a smaller reservation southwest of the cities where there's a pretty big casino that a lot of the people in the Twin Cities go to on a pretty regular basis. If they were to open a cannabis dispensary down there, that would be, I think, really interesting. And I think they would see quite an influx of folks from the Twin Cities area.
Interesting.
I just want to see if they'd open up their casino to, bartering with some weed, and instead of having some chips, throw like an eighth down there. You know what I'm saying? You win an eighth, you could lose your eighth, something like that. I think would be popping.
Little side dice games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll throw an eighth on the Yole. You know what I'm saying? See what happens.
Throw a tenth on it.
Yeah,
I'll throw a tenth on them. Ohio.
Turn an eighth into a half pound real quick. Yeah, that'd be popping.
I'd rather see the tribes do this. I'd rather see the tribes do this in big alcohol or pharma.
Mm-hmm.
Them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We've fucked the Indians so many times. Hey, whatever we can help to get them, man.
I'm gonna say this though. In a lot of cases, these so-called Indian reservations are really just white people pretending to be Indians too. So let me just make sure that I say this, because I've traveled around the country.
There are a lot of real ones.
And I've traveled around the country, and I'm very fortunate enough to know a lot of natives.
Because I don't know the percentage,
and I'm fortunate enough
respect my
to
people.
say that I have native friends that used to help me with cigarettes, and I know that they don't like that there are other tribes that are out there that definitely are people that are appropriating their culture. So either way, shape, or form, no, they got good
Stone.
weed. Shit.
Stone, you being in Texas for so long, what's the longest you've ever driven for actually like really good weed? Not just like Colorado weed or anything, but like really good weed.
I mean, I got it. It doesn't get here on wheels. I don't think. I haven't driven myself.
But you have in the past. You have at some point in time in your life, correct?
Well,
Like
yeah,
before the internet, you drive to get weed.
Yeah, we tried to get weed, but and usually it was somewhere out in the boonies.
Yeah. So what's the farthest you ever drove to get like actual good weed?
Like an hour.
An hour.
Yeah, that's
From
probably
Austin. An hour from Austin.
2020 is 2020, whatever. It's the 20th something. Everybody has good weed somewhere. That's
Yeah,
how
but see
good weed
that's not what I'm asking though. That has nothing to do with the time frame, because Stone was alive in the 80s and the 90s. So
Okay.
yeah, that's
Okay,
what I'm
okay.
saying. So I'm asking, like in just as a generalization, being out in Texas, what is the farthest you ever had to drive to get really good weed?
About an hour outside Austin.
Okay. About an hour.
Not that far.
All right.
Worth the drive.
It was worth the drive. See what I'm saying?
Texas heat.
Yeah.
Rochelle, what's the farthest you've ever driven
Digging
in
right.
Minneapolis to get weed?
We're running out of time now. We
when I
gotta keep it
By the
rolling.
time I lived in the Twin Cities, it was never a problem. But when I grew up in rural Wisconsin, that was something else. So I usually drive like an hour. There was a guy who lived outside of Minneapolis when I was younger. But other than that, we were a college town, so it was usually around a lot of times more hash than flour, actually.